Okay, well, I'm streaming, I guess. I don't know where it is. Oh dear, okay. Hey! I went live before I found my... Oh, there it is. I found my phone. Oops, not top chat. I need live chat. Okay, so I don't miss anything. I found it. It's time for pajama party. The secret. The secret nights. Oh my god. My day is all upside down. It's pretty good. The sleep has been really good. Okay. Gonna retweet the link. Oh. Huh, it's good. It's all good. And find the secret. And we're going to do as much of a recap as I remember, which is very little. And the very ending of yesterday's chapter that we didn't get to. Hey, what's up? I have my first COVID vaccine tomorrow. Very excited. I'm a little bit frightened because, you know, people, conspiracy theorists are like, it's gonna give you brain problems. It's like, well, you know, at least I'll be alive to have them. Okay. No data. Am I still going? It says no data. Shouldn't. I think I'm still streaming. Oh, I know, baby. I'm going. Cool. Alright, there you go. Good boy. Alright, Fitzy's doing really well. Fitz is keeping his he's keeping, you know, all the areas clean. He's got his little red bandage off his leg. He let me snip it off. He let me help him, realizing that I was helping him, which for him is quite, you know, clever. Yeah. So he missed one of his antibiotics this morning because I was asleep, but he's just had his nighttime ones, and yeah, he'll be fine missing one dose. He's okay. Alright, so we started The Secret, which, remember Ezra, who was Edward Fear's son? He was 6 years old in the last book and nobody liked him. He is now a grown adult with his own wife and moustache and family, and they've all travelled to the village of Wickham, back where it all began. He has a son named Jonathan, who was the recipient of today's stupid voice, or this book's stupid voice, I think. And some daughters called, from memory, Rachel and Abigail, I think. And a wife named Jane. So he's just come back, and Wickham is full of dead people. It's like a Marie Celeste situation. There's like a couple of ladies in a carriage who are dead, and, you know, they're just finding dead bodies everywhere, you know, seemingly in the middle of life activities. Back to Wickham, where everyone's dead, Dave. Yeah. Yeah. The interesting thing about the name Wickham is that it just means village. The words Wick and Ham mean the same thing, which is pretty funny. Does that mean John Wick's the same person as John Hamm? Yes, it does. Okay, so the end of last chapter that we didn't get to, and I had to paste the content into the comments, is Jonathan went to find the magistrate at Wickham. So he's gone into the scary parlour where there's, you know, no people. And he said, "Hello, I'm here to see the magistrate." Like, nobody's replying to him. Squinting into the dim light, Jonathan saw an old man at a desk with his back to the door. Jonathan could make out long grey hair falling onto the collar of a brown coat. He's already sexy. Jonathan knocked lightly on the frame of the open door and said, "Sir, may I come in, sir?" He's got the Foghorn Leghorn voice. The old man did not move. Jonathan took a deep breath and stepped into the room. He made his way up to the high-backed chair and gently tapped on the man's shoulder. "Sir? Sir?" The man moved, and Jonathan started to scream. End of chapter. God, R.L. Stine is awesome for ending every chapter on people screaming or something. Oh, yesterday I was reading, yeah, it's not like hard to figure out. Hey Josh, what's up? Scream in Ecstasy. Oh, I was doing the other thing. I know I've been promising you really gory deaths in the Fear Street Saga, like a lady who got bread dough shoved in her mouth and then she was put near the oven and the bread dough got bigger and it suffocated her, but I've been reading the Fear Street Sagas Continued last night, which is like 3 completely unrelated books, and it happens in one of those, not in this one, so I guess I'm going to read them afterwards. They're not very good. Hey, other Josh. Oh, we've got both Joshes, we're set. So yeah, that particular horrific Fear Street Saga death doesn't show up in this book. I'm sorry, I thought it did. There are plenty of gory descriptions though of other stuff happening, so we'll be good. Oh, Josh. I'm sure it did get a rise out of readers. That is the yeast funny joke. Like, least. The Netflix adaptation was actually pretty good. Like, it was very different. Like, everything was different, so it was good. Oh yeah, these books are goofy as fuck, which is what makes them great. And the goofiness, I think, enhances the fact that they scared me so badly when I was a kid. They scared me real bad, but I loved them for it. The Secret, this one was my favourite of the 3. So, Chapter 3. Jonathan has just done the ending of Psycho on, well, you know, spoilers. Jonathan's scream echoed off the walls of the tiny room. The man toppled and slid to the floor, panting loudly. Struggling to keep from screaming again, Jonathan gazed wide-eyed at the hideous face. Oh, boo, books for the upper crust, that's so good. Can't make any puns because my brain's fried from no sleep and then too much sleep. Come here, sweetheart. Come on. There's a bag of catnip on the floor and Flora's on. I think you've been on it. Come on. Quick. Let the people see you. The man's long grey hair rested on nothing but bone. The grinning skull stared up at Jonathan, its teeth yellow and rotting. As Jonathan gaped down, frozen in horror, a spider crawled out from the deep, empty eye socket. Jonathan shrieked out his horror. Whoa! He wanted to run, but his feet seemed to be nailed to the floor. He couldn't take his eyes from the white-haired, grinning skeleton. He screamed again. Did you wonder if he was still screaming? He is. Jonathan! Jonathan, what is wrong? Ezra shouted, his dad, bursting into the room. Ezra stopped and stared down at the corpse. Come, we must go, he said softly, placing his hands on Jonathan's shoulders. He guided the boy from the room. Outside, Ezra ordered, Go back to the wagon and sit with your mother and sisters. I will be there soon, just stay put and wait for me. Yes, Papa, said Jonathan, grateful to be out in the fresh air.
Beep, 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 beep. Beep, 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 beep.
Sorry, Flora's naughty, she needs to be beeped. She wasn't doing anything, I just wanted to yell beep at her. He walked slowly back to the wagon, breathing deeply, trying to slow his racing heart. He didn't want to scare his mother, but he knew she would ask him what he had seen, and there was no way to describe it without frightening her. No way to say it that wouldn't be horrible to hear. No one lived in the town of Wickham, Jonathan realized, as a wave of terror swept over him. Every single human had died. Wickham was dead, a town of rotting corpses. What have you found? Said his mother eagerly as Jonathan stepped up to the wagon. And where is your father? Papa will be back soon, said Jonathan. He is exploring the village. Oh, God damn it, this fucking mic. I'm sorry, thank you for the mic, it was a gift, but it's never good enough, is it? It's never fucking good enough. Sorry, it's unrelated. Did you talk to the innkeeper? Jane demanded. It has taken a really long time. Did you talk to the innkeeper? Jane demanded. Why was that carriage left on the road? Did he say anything? No, Mama, said Jonathan softly. There was no innkeeper. There's no one. Jane leaned forward, her eyes burning into his. She chewed her lower lip. Jonathan, what do you mean? Everyone is dead, said Jonathan. Everyone. There's no one alive in the whole town. Jane gasped. She started to say something, but Ezra returned. He climbed up beside Jonathan on the box and, without saying a word, cracked the reins. The wagon lurched forward with a jolt. Ezra, cried Jane, what is it? Where is everyone? What did you find out? Plague, Ezra answered flatly, narrowing his eyes and staring straight ahead. No survivors. How does he know it was plague? I don't know, maybe he's a... And the goods? We shall soon see, Ezra said. Yeah, that's just a thing, it's fine. Ezra drove the wagon out of town, the wooden wheels bouncing over the rutted dirt road. He said nothing. His expression remained set, hard and thoughtful. Ezra was trying to figure out if everyone's dead as well. He didn't slow the horses until they came to a farmhouse. It was a wooden saltbox house, smaller than the magistrate's, but still 2 stories tall. 2 stories tall with a small attic. Plague. It does sound like Sharon, yeah. Father, everyone's dead. Father, they're all dead, guys. Yeah. It was like it was a live guy. I looked at him, it was a dead guy. Far random. A brick chimney ran through the middle of the house. A shed connected the kitchen to a big barn. Ezra pulled the wagon up to the door of the house and stopped the horse. I have no idea what I was thinking about the HBO Gritty Bombadil show. It was just like, what? I don't really understand it as I was writing it. I liked it. I still like it. I still think it's funny. I think it's the only way left to go with Lord of the Rings, you know? What are you doing? Little creep. Flora, no, you guys. Is this the Goods house? Jonathan wondered. Will they be dead too? Will they be alive? He's right, that is the 2 things they could be. Ezra lowered himself to the ground and made his way to the door. He knocked, 3 solid knocks, and waited. Yeah, I pictured the spider and I was just like, wow, how am I going to work this into it? I can see it so clearly and I need other people to see it too. It was kind of like the curse from the ring, like I just needed other people to know this. Jonathan watched his father open the door and step inside. "Jonathan," Jane whispered, giving him a shove. "Go with him." Jonathan climbed down from the wagon. Abigail slipped out too before her mother could stop her. I think Abigail's like 3. They followed Ezra into the farmhouse. Dead, alive, all gone. Yeah, that's true. Stepping into the front parlour, Jonathan's eyes explored the room. That's one way to do it. He was somewhat surprised to find it neat and tidy. He saw no sign of anyone, dead or alive. All gone. It felt as if the people who lived there had left. There is gone! Oh my god. "Hello?" he called, but he was not surprised when he received no answer. "They must be here! They must!" Ezra exclaimed. "I will not rest until I see their rotting corpses with my own eyes." Ezra ran up the stairs. Standing in the parlour with his sister, Jonathan could hear his father's frantic footsteps above him. Ezra ran from room to room. Jonathan then heard Ezra climb up to the attic. When Ezra returned, he ran past the children as if not seeing them. Jonathan heard him as he explored the large common room, the shed, and the barn. A few minutes later, Ezra returned to the parlour, his face purple with rage. "Papa, what is it?" Jonathan cried. "They are gone!" Ezra screamed. "A plague has killed everyone in Wickham, but the goods have escaped." Oh, this is chapter 4, sorry. Jane Fear ran into the house with Rachel in her arms, the other little sister. "Please, Ezra," she pleaded, tugging at her husband's sleeve. "We must leave this horrible place. The goods are not here. We must leave." Ezra shook her off. "No," he replied firmly. "We will stay here, Jane. The goods lived here not long ago. Somewhere in this house there will be a clue to tell us where they have gone." Yeah, Ezra is still totally unlikable. Hey, T-Biscuit 54. Gone was a very good guess. He made his way to a desk in the corner and started digging through the drawers. Jane followed him, weeping. "Ezra, we cannot stay here. We cannot stay here all alone with only corpses for neighbours." "Wife," Ezra started. "Think of your children," Jane cried, holding the baby against her chest. Oh, I guess Rachel is a baby. Okay. "Silence!" Ezra screamed, pushing her away. He glared furiously at her, and Jonathan trembled when he saw that mad gleam in his father's eyes. "I have heard enough from you, Jane," Ezra cried sternly, like a dickhead. "What, do you need to... Oh, she needs to go outside." You could play a drinking game where you have to drink every time I let the fucking cats outside. "I've heard enough from you, Jane," Ezra cried sternly. "No more pleading and no more questions. From now on I expect obedience from all of you. Obedience and nothing else." Yeah, no, these books were quite hard to find, actually. After, I actually read The Secret in parts at Paper Plus whenever Mum was in town doing jobs. Like, I'd go into Paper Plus, get The Secret, find where I'd gotten up to, and just read like a couple of chapters. Like, 10 years old. Never actually bought a copy until I found a used one at the Red Cross book sale as an adult, They were hard to find when I actually had money to buy them. No one moved. Abigail whimpered softly, but Ezra's hard expression didn't soften. "I am going to find the goods," he said slowly through gritted teeth. "They cannot escape me. I am going to find them, and nothing will stop me." That bit's in italics. Jonathan's mother ran from the room, crying. Abigail clung to Jonathan's side, and he put an arm around her tiny shoulders. Ezra said, Jonathan, start unpacking the wagon. This house will be our new home. Jonathan gasped. We are going to live here, in someone else's house? He wondered, horrified by the idea. We are going to live here, so near the frightening village of corpses. Jonathan, do as you are told, ordered his father, his voice booming through the house. Yes, Papa, Jonathan said. With a sinking heart, Jonathan hurried outside. His hands trembling, he unhitched the horse and led him into the barn. We are going to live in their house, he thought. The Goods' own house, with all their things in it. What if they are not dead? What if they come back and find us here? He found a bucket in the barn and carried it outside. There was a pump in the yard. He pumped water into the bucket and took it to the horse. This is really good writing. At least we will have a place to sleep tonight, he told himself, with a feather bed and a hearth to cook by. Jonathan sighed. Maybe it will not be so bad here, he thought. He gazed around at the green fields, the apple orchard in the distance, and the cozy house. Smoke was already rising from the chimney. His mother must have started a fire. Maybe we will be happy here, he thought, if only the Goods do not come back. ... Oh my god, Jonathan is the worst at figuring things out, apart from every other member of his family. The Fears found everything they needed in the Goods' house. Jonathan discovered preserves, smoked meat, and cornmeal in the shed. Abigail found a bolt of linen in the attic. Soon, she and Jonathan had fresh new clothes made from the linen. It's amazing. Their mother was kept busy cooking, cleaning, spinning, and sewing. Abigail helped her mother and took care of Rachel. I think they said Abigail was like 9 and Rachel was 3. I can't remember. I know, the Goods are supposedly poor and now they have a 2-story house with an attic, which I don't remember from the first book. They might be in someone else's house. I don't know. Fresh new cornmeal, yeah, jam sandwiches, all kinds. It feels like the house is a trap, in all honesty, but I don't think it is. I think it's just poorly written. I can't remember. Jonathan did the heavy chores, chopping wood, drawing water, caring for the horse. When his mother was very busy, he also looked after the girls for her. Maybe Jonathan's 9 and Abigail's 5. I can't remember. As they all settled into their new life, Jonathan's only concern was for his father. Ezra Fear had only one thing on his mind. Where had the Goods gone? Boys only want one thing, and it's disgusting. To find the Goods and take revenge on them. Jonathan watched his father rummage through storage bins and drawers, reading every scrap of paper he could find, studying anything that might give him a clue to their whereabouts. He thinks of nothing but revenge, Jonathan thought angrily, watching his father read ledgers one day. He wouldn't even eat if Mama didn't put a plate of food in front of him every evening. Nothing distracts him from the Goods. It's a fucking evil house. Yeah. Then Abigail ran into the room shouting, Papa, look at me! Ezra glanced up from the ledger, and Jonathan saw his father's scowl melt into a smile. Where did you get that pretty dress? Ezra asked. Turn around for me. Abigail tossed a lock of red hair off her forehead and turned slowly, showing off her new blue dress. Mama found it in the back of an old wardrobe upstairs, she explained, her blue eyes twinkling. It fits me perfectly. Ezra held his arms out, and Abigail ran to him for a hug. Releasing her, he said, Run along now and help your mama. I have work to do here. Yes, Papa, Abigail said, and she skipped out of the room. Now they have wardrobes? They've got all kinds of shit. Papa looks almost happy, Jonathan thought as he watched his father. Abigail is the only one who can do that. She is the only one who can still make Papa smile. Quickly, Ezra's smile faded, and he turned to Jonathan and demanded, "What are you looking at, boy? You have chores to do, have you not?" "Yes, Papa," said Jonathan. He hurried out of the room. "Yeah, it's probably Baby George. Remember Baby George? We must never ever forget there was also Baby George, who presumably became Boy George. I didn't set it up for that, but, you know. I don't know, maybe he sold the story of his life to the tabloid press. About 3 weeks after they had moved into the house, Ezra called Jonathan to him. "Hitch up the wagon," Ezra said. "We're going to call on our neighbours." Now, you might be wondering what neighbours, and so am I, but the next paragraph is going to clear that up. There were a couple of farmhouses a few miles down the road. Jonathan knew that people were living in them because he could see smoke rising from that direction every morning. The Fears wagon stopped in front of a large, prosperous-looking farmhouse with red chickens pecking around the yard. Jonathan saw a young woman working in the garden, bending low to pull out weeds. Woohoo! She stood up when she saw Jonathan and Ezra approach. Ezra took off his hat. "Good day, miss," he said, like a sane person, almost. "Is the master of the house at home?" The young woman curtsied and hurried excitedly into the house, calling, "Papa, we have visitors." A grey-haired man with a big belly topping toothpick legs came out of the front door and introduced himself in a friendly way. Ezra removed his hat to introduce himself and Jonathan. "We have just moved into the area, Master Martin," Ezra explained. "We are looking for a family named Good." At the mention of the name Good, the older man blinked hard. His face turned pale. "We thought the Goods were living down the road, but they are gone," Ezra continued. "Would you happen to know what has become of them?" The man's friendly expression faded, replaced by a scowl. "I do not know the Goods," he said gruffly. "I am sorry. I cannot help you. Good day, Master Fear." Abruptly, the man hurried back into his house, shutting the door behind him and his daughter. Jonathan saw the girl's face at the window. The old man pulled her away. Ezra began to shake with rage. "What can this mean?" he cried. "Why does he refuse to speak to us?" "You have no clothes on, Papa," said Jonathan. "Oh, wait, no. No, he's got clothes on, I guess." "Perhaps they know something at the next farm, Papa," Jonathan said softly, trying to calm his father. They continued to the next farm, 3 miles away. This one appeared poorer, a smaller house with rocky fields behind it. A thin old man tilled the field with a single hoe. What was her name? Ha ha! Any more sleep. "Good day, sir," called Ezra, tipping his hat as he approached. "May I have a word with you?" The man stopped, but made no move toward them. He stared at Jonathan and Ezra suspiciously. "Papa, you are rude and unpleasant to literally everyone." Yeah, every time you say the name Good, you have this madness on your face that is very apparent. And people just don't want to hang out with you. My name is Ezra Fear," Ezra told him. "This is my son Jonathan. We are looking for a family in the region and wondered if you knew what had become of them." "And what family is that?" asked the old man, leaning on the hoe now. Ezra cleared his throat. "The family of George Good," he said. It's funny to do that, I'm sorry. The man's scowl deepened. He remained still for a moment, leaning on the hoe, his eyes studying Ezra. Then he raised himself, turned, and strode quickly toward his barn. Ezra nodded at Jonathan. "He is going to tell us something," he whispered, without yawning. They followed the old man across the rocky ground to his barn. The old man disappeared inside. Jonathan and Ezra waited several yards from the door. In a moment, the man came running out, holding a long knife.
Ezra smiled uncertainly. Then Jonathan saw the confusion on his face. Before Ezra could move, the man had pressed the knife to Ezra's neck. "I am going to cut your throat," he snarled. End of chapter 4. Ezra's going to figure out that this is not, talking in about 4 or 5 hours. You have winner ham, the man declared. Oh, the fears and the goods, they have always been fighting. They want that ham. They don't understand that map to ham not included. Chapter 5. Ezra's body stiffened. Oh, we don't need to know what he's into. With a low grunt, the man tightened his grip and held the knife blade tight against Ezra's skin. "Stop! Please!" cried Jonathan. "We have done nothing wrong." "George Good was the child of a witch," said the man. "His evil brought the plague to our village, and he escaped it. What do you want with George Good?" "We are no friends of his, believe me," Ezra choked out. "We wish him nothing but harm." "I wish him nothing but ham, but I guess I'm just the bigger person." The man relaxed a little, easing the knife blade back a few inches from Ezra's throat. "Get off my farm," he growled. "Do not come back ever, and never dare to ask about the villainous Goods again." The villainous and ironically named Good family. Yeah, exactly. This is... I mean, they don't actually show you this in the story, but this is how every social interaction Ezra has goes. He goes to the shop and he's like, "Can I have some milk, please?" And they're like, "How dare you? I will kill you." He's just... everyone hates this fucking guy. He released Ezra. Ezra and Jonathan hurried to the wagon and drove off. Jonathan should have been on the wagon keeping it running. But "Remember this day, son," Ezra said solemnly. "This is further proof of the evil of the Goods. We are not the only people they have harmed." The next day, Jonathan's father went back to searching the house. "I must have missed something," Jonathan heard him muttering. What are they hiding? What are they hiding?" Jonathan carried a stack of firewood inside one morning as his mother sat sewing by the hearth, with Rachel on her lap. Abigail stood over a basin full of water, scrubbing the last of the breakfast dishes. "Sorry. I'm awake." "Mama says I have no more chores to do today," Abigail said happily. "Not until supper time. I am going to go exploring." "Watch her, Jonathan, please," said his mother. "Do not let her stray too far." Abigail tossed the dirty dishwater out the door and wiped her hands on her apron. She pulled on her cap and ran outside, the blue ribbons on her cap flying. Jonathan followed her. "Shall we go to the creek?" he suggested. "I have already been to the creek," said Abigail. "I want to go into the village." Jonathan stopped. "Into Wickham? But why, Abby? There's nobody there." "I know," said Abigail. "We can go anywhere we like. There is no one to stop us." "No," said Jonathan. "Mama said you should not stray too far. The village is too far." "Are you scared, Jonathan?" Jonathan bristled. Was his younger sister daring him? "Nothing scares me," he said, although he knew this was not true. His father scared him, for one, and all those dead people in the village. "Come on," said Abigail. "I am going to the village. If you must keep an eye on me, then you will just have to come along." She ran down the road with Jonathan following close. He felt nervous about going back to the village, but he could not let his younger sister go alone. The streets were as quiet and empty as before. The silence roared in Jonathan's ears. He heard no dogs barking, no birds chirping, no insect sounds. Yeah, what's the matter, Jono? You a pussy, eh? You don't want to go in the village full of dead people. Father, they're just dead. They can't get you. Jonathan didn't tell her there was a spider inside one of them. What do you think they were like? Abigail whispered. The people who lived here. I do not know, said Jonathan. Like us, I suppose. They walked down the dirt road to the village common. Abigail found a small pile of bones lying under a tree. Look, Jonathan, she said sadly. This was a puppy. How does this small child know what the bones of specific animals look like? I'm thinking maybe these are dark triad children, maybe. I'm going to cut out all of the references to the dead puppy. It's just more description of it, of some bones, but I'm going to cut them anyway. Maybe we should not be here, he thought. He glanced around. Were all the people in the town really dead? Abigail thinks they should bury the puppy. We have no shovel, said Jonathan. But we can get one, Abigail said, indicating the houses and sheds all around them. I am sure any one of these sheds will have a shovel in it. We cannot just take somebody's shovel, Abby, Jonathan said. Why not? Abigail demanded. It's not stealing. They're dead. Yes, Jonathan thought, they are dead, and their bodies are still sitting inside those houses. Jonathan shuddered. He did not want Abigail to go into one of the houses to find a dead person. I will get a shovel, he said. You wait here. He walked up to the nearest house. It was a little wooden cottage, only 2 rooms. Abigail stood right behind him as he gingerly pushed open the door. I told you to stay by the tree, Jonathan said gruffly. I want to come with you, she said. I'm too scared to be alone. Jonathan sighed and took her hand. It is misappropriation. It was dark inside the cottage. Jonathan's eyes took a moment to adjust to the darkness. Abigail clutched Jonathan's sleeve. They stood frozen in the doorway. Then Abigail whispered, Go get the shovel! Jonathan stepped carefully across the room. He opened a cupboard beside the back door of the cottage. Inside the cupboard, something gleamed white with 2 dark and empty eye sockets glaring out. Oh shit, what is that? A skeleton! Jonathan leapt back. Abigail screamed. Why is it in the cupboard? Actually, no, that's that skeleton's choice, and it's not for me to ask that question. That's its business. The skeleton shifted. It toppled out of the closet and clattered onto the floor. Jonathan leaned over it, panting, trying to slow the frantic beating of his heart. And then he started backing away. Wait, Abigail whispered. I see a shovel in the cupboard. Abigail has her eyes on the prize. She's a girl boss. Jonathan forced himself to glance back into the cupboard. He saw the shovel, but he did not want to get it. Get it, demanded Abigail. She gave him a shove. He stepped carefully around the clutter of bones on the floor, all that remained of the skeleton. Then, holding his breath, he snatched the shovel and ran out of the house. He was glad to be back outside in the bright sunlight. He followed Abigail to the tree and dug a little hole. Anyway, they put the puppy in the grave. Okay, it's all fine. Abigail stood beside him with a branch in her hand. Dominatio per malum, she chanted solemnly, waving the branch over the wee grave. What does that mean? Jonathan asked. I don't know, said Abigail. Those are the words on that sparkly thing Papa wears around his neck. Jonathan knew the words too. The silver pendant with 4 blue stones had always fascinated him. He had once asked his father what the words meant, but Ezra refused to tell him. Squinting against the bright sunlight, Jonathan filled in the grave. Then Abigail planted the branch in the ground as a marker. They were late for supper that evening. Ezra was already seated at the table with his usual preoccupied expression. Jonathan entered the kitchen first, and Ezra barked at him, "Where have you been?" "Outside," was all Jonathan said. Well, back then they didn't know about not reading aloud any Latin you saw, ever. Abigail came in next, and Ezra smiled. She went to him and gave him a kiss, and he played with the blue ribbons on her cap. "You are keeping an eye on your sister, I hope," Ezra said to Jonathan. "Yes, Papa," Jonathan replied quietly. He revealed nothing about going into the village. He knew it would make his father angry. Abigail kept it a secret too. A few days later, Jonathan saw Abigail skipping past the barn, heading for the road. Alarmed, he chased after her. "Where are you gone?" he called. "To the village," she replied without stopping. He took her hand and pulled her to a stop. "You cannot go," he said sternly. "I am supposed to be watching you." "You can watch me in the village," she replied impatiently. Jonathan sighed and followed after her. They find some more dead animals, and Abigail decides that we need to bury all of them, right? "I am going to come back as often as I can," she told her brother, as she stuck a branch in the ground beside the graves. "I will find all the poor dead animals and bury them all." I'm a little concerned about Abigail, but at the same time, what the fuck else is there for her to do, you know? Yeah, it's well, I mean, you can kind of justify anything if it's you doing it, you know. The only moral power through evil is my power through evil, as they say. The next time Abigail set out for the village, Jonathan didn't try to stop her. He knew it was useless. He was getting used to the village and all its death, and didn't even mind the awful silence so much anymore. Then one day, when they were playing in Wickham, Abigail came across the remains of a little girl. Holy shit, she's escalating. The skeleton wore a rotting blue dress that once must have been pretty, and a cap like Abigail's. "I think we should bury her," said Abigail. "She deserves a proper funeral as much as an animal does." "We will need a coffin," Jonathan said. "We cannot bury a person in the dirt." "Yes," agreed Abigail. "You go find a box, and I will look for a place to bury her." Yeah, she has a little compassion for animals. That's got to be good, right? On the other hand, she can identify what any animal was from its bones. Which is a little weird for a 9-year-old. Or 5-year-old, or however old she's supposed to be. Jonathan crossed the village common and entered the tavern to search for a girl-sized box. He found a wooden crate. It was a little short, but it would have to do. He hoisted the crate onto his shoulder and carried it outside to Abigail. He didn't see her by the meeting house where he had left her. "Abigail," he called, immediately worried. No answer. After setting the crate on the ground, he walked down the road. Yeah, she has a gift. He heard high... Oh, sorry. Sorry? Let's all pray she has a future in veterinary science and not tragedy. No one in these books has a future that isn't tragedy, but maybe it also includes veterinary science. He heard high-pitched giggling behind the village magistrate's house. Jonathan peered around the side of the house, and he uttered a low cry of surprise when he spotted Abigail. She was playing with another little girl. Jonathan stared at the little girl, startled to see another living person in Wickham. She was skinny, with long blonde curls poking out from under her cap and grey eyes. Where on earth had she come from? He wondered. I've completely lost the Foghorn Leghorn voice. It's just... But, you know, I'm tired. The point is, Jonathan found a box the size of a little girl's skeleton, which he instinctively knows is slightly short, but it'll probably do. Normal children. He started toward his sister. Abigail, he began. At the sight of him, the other little girl darted behind a tree. You frightened her, Jonathan, Abigail scolded. No need to worry, Hester, she called to her friend. It is only my brother. But the little girl did not come out from behind the tree. She must be afraid of boys, Abigail said. She hurried behind the tree to look for the girl. A few seconds later, Abigail reappeared, bewildered. She is gone, she told her brother. She disappeared, and we were having so much fun together. Yeah, that's because I'm tired. I'm not enunciating, but I never enunciate, so... Abby, who is she? Asked Jonathan. She told me her name is Hester, Abigail answered. She is very nice. Where does she live? Abigail shrugged. She did not say, but I hope she comes back. It was so pleasant to have someone to play with. She wasn't a ghost at all, I know. Who could this little girl be? Such a mystery. Jonathan wondered who this playmate could possibly be. Wow, there we go. Did she live in Wickham? Could there still be people living in the village? What a mystery! Exclamation mark. Wow. Okay. The next day, as Jonathan was digging a grave for a baby, Abigail had wandered off to find a stick for a marker. When Jonathan finished digging the hole, Abigail still had not returned. She must be playing with her friend again, Jonathan thought. I think I will watch them for a few minutes and see what I can learn about that strange girl. He crept over to the big house, but the girls were not there. He found them playing in the graveyard. Ducking behind a grave slab, he leaned against the cold stone and spied on them. Hester twirled round and laughed. She has a pretty bell-like laugh, Jonathan thought. Just then, Hester took Abigail's hand, and the two girls wove a path through the gravestones. Hester stopped before a hole in the ground. She reached down to tug at something in the hole. Up came the lid of a coffin. Jonathan stood frozen, watching. Hester stepped into the coffin and reached up for Abigail's hand. Abigail touched Hester's hand, and with a firm jerk, Hester pulled Abigail into the coffin. Chapter 6. Should I read Chapter 6? Yeah, I'm going to read Chapter 6. I'm pretty sure that that wraps up the Wickham section. Abigail! No! Jonathan shouted. He burst from his hiding place and ran to the grave. I must get her out of there, he thought, his heart pounding. I must save her. He stopped at the edge of the hole, stared down, and Abigail popped out of the coffin, laughing. Furious, Jonathan grabbed her arms and yanked his little sister out of the coffin. Stop playing foolish games, he scolded angrily. We have to go home now. But Jonathan, Hester, and I... Refusing to listen to her protest, he pulled her along behind him. We must get away from here, he thought, forgetting the other girl. Abigail dragged her feet and glanced back at Hester. Why do we have to go home? She asked. I was having fun. We just do. Jonathan didn't want to admit the truth. He was afraid. Afraid of what? Of the little girl? He did not know. But he knew that something was not right. Jesus. He's getting there. He's getting there. Why is it called The Secret and not Into the Coffin? I don't know, but I think all of these books could be called Into the Coffin. Maybe R.L. Stine wanted to save that book for like a collection. Sorry. Jonathan, you and Abby must stay in today, his mother said. This is like paragraph break, like for the next section. I need you both to watch Rachel for me. Abigail groaned. I wish we could go back to the village, she whispered to Jonathan. I was looking forward to playing with Hester. But Jonathan was secretly relieved. He said nothing about it to Abigail, but he was determined not to go to Wickham anymore. Hester pulled Abby into an open coffin, he remembered with a shudder. I must keep Abby away from her. Jonathan and Abigail were playing with Rachel in front of the hearth, rolling a ball along the floor to her, teaching her how to identify animals from their bones, when Ezra appeared. Hello, Papa, said Abigail brightly. Ezra flashed her a smile. Would you like to go for a walk with me? I need a bit of air. Mama asked me to watch Rachel today, Abigail told him. Jonathan can watch Rachel, said Ezra. Come along with me. I like your company. And no one else's. Abigail jumped up and went outside with her father. Feeling a little hurt, Jonathan watched them through the window. He gasped when he saw her. Hester! Jonathan saw her run up to Abigail and Ezra. Curious, Jonathan picked up Rachel and hurried outside to see what would happen. He could see the surprise on his father's face as Abigail introduced Hester to him. Where do you live, Hester? Ezra asked. Nearby, Hester replied shyly. And who are your parents? Ezra demanded. Mama and Papa, answered the blonde little girl. Ezra pointed in the direction of the farmhouses a few miles down the road. So you live there? She is a good girl, Papa, Abigail interrupted, her eyes shining. She was clearly happy to have a playmate. Hester turned her sparkling grey eyes on Ezra and asked, Can Abigail come to my house? Abigail tugged at his sleeve. Please, Papa, she begged. Please. Jonathan stepped forward. Do not let her go, Papa, he said. Ezra turned sharply to his son. Why not? Jonathan glanced uneasily at Hester and Abigail. I cannot say, Papa. I just know you must not let her go. Please let me go with Hester, Abigail said. It is so good to have a friend. Tears were forming in her eyes. Ezra gazed lovingly at his daughter. Jonathan knew his father could deny Abigail nothing. He knew what would happen next. All right, Abigail, you may go. Papa, urged Jonathan, let me go with her. No, said Ezra firmly, you will stay here. Someone must watch the baby. Not me, I'm just its father. You should probably look after it though, like, I don't really think it's my job or anything. But, Papa, you heard me, Jonathan, Ezra said, his temper rising. You are too old to play with little girls. You will stay here. He turned to Abigail and added, Run along, but be home for supper. I will, Abigail called back happily. She ran off with Hester, the blue ribbons on her cap flying behind her. Jonathan stared after his sister, watching her until they disappeared over the hill. Oh, it's Flora. Everybody drink. Come on, sweetheart. Here you go. Jonathan, your mother is calling you, said Ezra. Do you not hear? Yes, Papa, said Jonathan. He carried Rachel inside to his mother. The sun had gone down, and Abigail had not returned home. Supper is ready, Jonathan, his mother said. I will take Rachel now. Where the fuck have you been? She picked up the baby and put her into the wooden high chair. Jonathan took his place at the table, gazing at the darkening sky beyond the window. Supper. Supper, and still Abby is not home, he thought anxiously. His mother took a pot of chicken stew off the fire. Chickens again. They are not eating chickens. I'm sorry. We don't have time to get into it. But they're not eating chicken, okay? And called Ezra to the kitchen. Jonathan could see that his father was worried too. Deep lines furrowed Ezra's brow. Oh, he was so worried and so tired. Deep lines furrowed Ezra's brow and his eyes were dark and troubled. But Jonathan did not dare say a word. Jane Fear went to the door and called, "Abigail, supper!" There was no response. "Where is that girl?" Jane wondered aloud. "She went off to play with a friend," Ezra said quietly. "I expect she'll be back soon." "A friend," said Jane. "What friend?" "A little girl," Ezra answered. He looked uncomfortable. "A sweet girl. She lives nearby." Jane glanced at Jonathan. He knew she wanted him to explain to her, but he said nothing. He knew his mother was frightened too, but she tried to hide it. "The stew is getting cold," she said stiffly. "We shall have to start without her." She dished out the chicken stew. The family began to eat. No one spoke. Beyond the window, the sky darkened. Still no sign of Abigail. Jonathan glanced up and his mother met his eyes. He turned to Ezra, who was carefully cutting the bits of chicken into smaller and smaller pieces, but not eating a single one. Jane Fear suddenly stood up. "Ezra, I am worried," she said. "What could be keeping her?" Ezra stared out at the black sky. He wiped his mouth with his napkin and stood up. "I'm going to look for her," he said. "Let me go with you, Papa?" Jonathan asked. "No," Ezra snapped. "Stay with your mother and sister." He threw on his hat. Then he took the lamp from its hook by the fireplace, lit it with a twig, and walked out into the darkness. "I must go with him," Jonathan thought desperately. "He does not know where to search. Only I do." He decided to follow Ezra. "I do not want to leave you alone, Mama," he said, "but Papa needs my help." Jane nodded and said, "Go with him." Jonathan slipped outside, following a few paces behind the glow of his father's lantern. The evening sky was purple, growing darker every second. A crescent moon hovered over the horizon. "Abigail," Ezra called. "Abigail!" He began to walk down the road toward the other farmhouses, away from Wickham. "He is going the wrong way," Jonathan thought in frustration. But then he saw his father stop and stand still, as if he were listening to something. Jonathan listened too. There was a soft, sweet sound. Laughter. A little girl's laughter. Where was it coming from? Ezra turned in confused circles. The laughter seemed to float on the air from all directions at once. The voice giggled again. Now it sounded as if it came from the village. Ezra walked toward it, following the sound. Jonathan trailed his father into the village. He had never seen it at night before. It felt emptier than ever. Ezra's lantern cast eerie shadows on the trees and houses. The shadows made the houses seem to move and breathe. "Abigail," Ezra called again, then stopped and listened. The little laugh chimed on the wind. "Ah! Is that you, Abigail?" Ezra called out. "Where are you?" The laugh came again, a little louder, like the tinkling of sleigh bells. "Ha ha 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 ha! Come on, Flora." "That is not Abigail," Jonathan thought. His father seemed to realize it too. "Who are you?" Ezra cried. "Show yourself to me." The only response was another girlish giggle. Ezra followed toward it, with Jonathan right behind him. Staying far enough behind not to be seen, Jonathan followed his father to the graveyard. Ezra stumbled among the crooked gravestones, the little laugh teasing him, taunting him, leading him farther into the maze of headstones. The lantern flashed a ghoulish yellow light on the grey markers. "Abigail!" Ezra cried, his voice cracking now. "Please come out." Ezra stopped again to listen. But this time, there was no laughter. Jonathan crept up closer and stood right behind his father, but Ezra did not notice. Ezra was standing at the foot of a grave. He held the lantern out so it illuminated the name on the marker. It read, Hester Good. Jonathan could hear Ezra gasp. Good? Did the marker really say Hester Good? The light breeze blew, and on the breeze came the sound of a voice. Not laughter this time, but words. Words spoken in the same girlish voice that had led them to the spot. Can Abigail come to my house? Hester! Hester's grave. Hester was not living, Jonathan realized to his horror. Hester was dead. But still she called. Can Abigail come to my house? Still she called. Called from the grave. Abby's little playmate, giggling and calling from the grave. Can Abigail come to my house? Slowly, Ezra moved the lantern to the right. His hand trembled. He nearly dropped the lantern as it cast its light on another grave. Freshly dug, with a new headstone. The light fell across the inscription on the grey stone. It read, Abigail Fear. No! Ezra tossed back his head and howled. The lantern slid from his hand and rolled into the dirt. Ezra dropped to his knees, still howling. Abigail! Abigail! He cried over and over, clawing at the dirt, trying to dig her up. Shuddering in terror, Jonathan bent over his father, reached for his father's heaving shoulders, tried to stop his father's mournful cries. Ezra pushed him roughly away. The breeze blew again, and with it came the laughter and the taunting request, Can Abigail come to my house? Uttering animal cries, Ezra tore at the dirt with his fingers. Desperate, Jonathan began to dig too. Ezra made no move to stop him now. It was a shallow grave. Jonathan's fingers soon touched the smooth, polished wood of a coffin. No, Ezra shrieked. No! Please, no! With a grunt, he shoved Jonathan out of the way and tore open the lid of the coffin. There lay little Abigail, her eyes closed, her lips white, her face a pale, bluish mask. She was dead. Curse them! Curse them! Ezra screamed. The goods will pay! They will burn again! Then his expression changed. The hatred melted into grief and horror. He lowered his face to his hands, sobbing, Abigail! Abigail! Jonathan choked back his own tears and helped his weeping father to his feet. Holding each other and sobbing, they stood motionless in the silent darkness. Hester Good's gleeful laughter surrounded them, ringing in their ears. No matter how they tried, they couldn't stop her gleeful chant. Abigail came to my house! Abigail came to my house! The end of part 2. Yeah, so that was really scary when I was a kid, but now I'm just thinking, it took them both a really long time to come to that conclusion. Oh, I can't stop yawning either. Wow. For part 2, we're going to pick up in Western Massachusetts, 1743. But, it actually does raise a lot of questions. I mean, they found a coffin and a gravestone, and somebody inscribed the gravestone. Like, it's a very sort of, there's a lot that goes into this. There's a lot of theatricality and there's a lot of effort for a bunch of ghosts, so it is a spy versus spy situation, yeah. The book The Secret is part 2. That was part 1 of The Secret. And now we're in part 2 of The Secret, which is part 2 of the Fear Street Saga trilogy. So, I mean, at least we're very clear about what happened, you know? There's not a lot of ambiguity. Oh, thank you so much for joining me. I'm going to have a shower and go to bed. I'm very tired. But this has been fun, and it was so scary. Oh, the video is part 2. Yeah. The video is part 2 of The Secret. Part 1 of the... Huh? So, yeah, wish me luck for sleeping and for my COVID vaccine tomorrow, and then more The Secret, I hope. Thank you for joining me. Good night, everybody. Wash your hands, wear your mask, be good to each other, and I don't know, try not to bury people if they're not dead yet. Just try not to, like, do your best. Good night. Good night, everyone. See you tomorrow.